Hi, this is Michael Becker, and this is a unique lesson in that we are tapping into the weekly meetup we do with Tinderbox every Saturday morning from 9 a.m. to 10:30 a.m. Pacific. And what we do is we talk about Tinderbox on these meetups. And for the next 4 weeks, we're going to be digging into Tinderbox through the lens of a course, a lesson that we're calling Blogging with Tinderbox. And effectively, what we're doing is we're going to break down our use of Tinderbox through 4 stages, basically foundation setting, then how do you go about writing articles, how do you use all the different elements of Tinderbox, so that ultimately you can go through the entire 4 C's of knowledge management, which is effectively collecting your notes, curating them, creating new ideas, and then ultimately contributing them to the world, publishing them out. So that's what we're going to be doing over the next 4 weeks. And here is today's lesson 1 from the team meetup. I hope you enjoy it. Thanks. See you later. All right, anybody else? Okay, if not, well, let's jump right in. Let me go ahead and share my screen. And let's see what we've got here. All right, so do you all see my file? Okay, so yeah. I'm gonna give a brief preamble. Unfortunately, I've got my 49-inch monitor, and so you're not going to be able to see me manipulate the Tinderbox menus as we go through this training. So if and when I do that, I'll just verbalize, I'm going to file XYZ to be able to select a particular menu. Bruce or somebody, if someone can be a scribe for me while I go through this and like take notes or help me capture questions, because I'm not going to be watching the chat per se live while
Sure.
while we're going through.
I volunteer to not do it.
To not do it. All right. Well, if someone can just watch the chat and see if they see questions come up, let me know.
Michael.
Oh, that part. I can.
Let me just add.
I'm fine with that.
Oh yeah, we're gonna get to you in just a second, Larry. You're part of the agenda.
Okay.
All right. So what I want to say is, what we're going to do is we're going to spend the next 20 minutes. So it's 9:20 now. We're going to end up at around 9:30, 9:50 at the latest doing this class. And then we're going to go, and then what we'll do is we'll then take that online to the forum for the week, and then we'll go through the next week's class and exercise, because we really want to try to stay focused. This course is called Blogging with Tinderbox, or basically basic blogging with Tinderbox. It's about leveraging and using and interacting with the tool. Want to start with an acknowledgement. Larry, this is an impetus of Larry. He called me up mid last week and said, I got an idea. And I immediately said, Larry, that's going to be a ton of work. No. And then 20 minutes later, I emailed Mark and I said, hey, Mark, why don't we do this? And let's do it this Saturday. So it went from that's going to be a lot of work to let's just do it, and not let the lot of work get in the way. And it turned out, and I think it's going to be nice, in fact, doing that way. So Larry, you want to give us a preamble of how we got here and what your expectations are?
Well, 2 things. Number 1 is I can't take full credit for the idea. I don't know if any of you listened to the NosillaCast podcast, and they had a programming by stealth series, and so out of an hour and a half weekly podcast, they spent 15-20 minutes teaching HTML, and every week there was an assignment, and every week you had to come back, and you could also go to their website and to their Facebook page actually and ask questions in the interim. And it had tremendous. It was called Programming by Stealth, and it sort of was how to learn this in the back door without actually taking coding classes. And so that worked so well. I thought of Michael when I just was listening to the latest podcast, so that's when I called him. And what I really wanted to accomplish here, and I really don't think this is much about blogging as it is. This is such an amorphous program that in trying to, for example, explain to my wife what Tinderbox is, it is really tough. And so I wanted to see, and I think a lot of you are in my shoes also, you want to see what goes in and what comes out of it. Because with spreadsheets, that's easy. With word processing, that's easy to understand. Even with databases, that's easy to understand, but it's not here. And so I think what we're going to end up here with is that we're going to all see that this is the input and this is how it could be, the output could benefit us. So that if we accomplish that, then we're going to be our appetites can be whetted to do more of this. And I'm confirmed in that somewhat because, Michael, we have 47 participants, and that's the best that I've ever seen it.
Yeah, that's awesome. I agree. And again, the key here too, to your point, this is not about blogging per se, but it, and the feedback I've had from many of the forums is if we don't make it concrete about some particular topic, it's really hard to anchor the knowledge and the learning to something. So I just pulled blogging out of thin air after our call and said this would be something easy to kind of structure the talk around. But you're right though, the tools and the training are going to be fundamental. So with that backdrop, let's kind of go through and talk about the kind of some of the next pieces. So the objective of this course is, not to do an in-depth dive about what's, the what's and whys of Tinderbox. The objective is to let you guys get as quickly operational as possible with some core functions and help you to be able to organize your thoughts and ideas. We're not teaching writing. We're not teaching blogging per se. We're not going to be teaching SEO. To Peter's point, we may or may not be teaching, automated interactions with servers to be able to publish out of Tinderbox, dynamically. You absolutely can do this, but that's not going to be done in 80 to 120 minute class for people that don't know servers and HTML and all of the language. It will take familiarity with that, and we'll get to that in more of an advanced point. But this really is that objective of effectively, when you open up a Tinderbox file and you start with this, what do I do? And that's our goal for this particular course and class. Now, what are you going to learn over the next 4 weeks? An introduction to blogging and post authoring. And basically when you blog, there's kind of, in my experience, there's basically 3 ways to look at it: snacks, bites, and meals. A snack is like 160 character tweet. A byte is 500 to 1,000 words, typically like a LinkedIn post. And a meal is a full article, somewhere between 1,000 to 2,500 words, maybe up to around 4,000. When you start getting beyond that, you're not really talking blogging anymore. You're talking about more, it might go on a blog or a Medium type environment if it's a longer piece, but it's less blogging and more like publishing when you start getting into that realm. To be successful with blogging, you want to be consistent, keeping a cadence, and Tinderbox can absolutely help you do that. We'll be talking about the 4 C's of knowledge management and how to overcome your data silos and unleash your creative genius, and how to embrace this concept of incremental formalization. We're going to address the approach for setting the foundation for your projects. In this case, it's blogging, but it really will be for any project. We'll be learning about the couple basics, and this is over the next 4 weeks, not all today, guys. Basic languages like HTML and Markdown. The basic languages of Tinderbox: notes, attributes, prototypes, action code. We'll be learning about export code 2 in the more advanced areas. And then we'll learn about agents and other stuff too. And again, we just came up with this class course idea on Wednesday. So these are the notes that I quickly grabbed together in a blank Tinderbox file as I started up from Wednesday to today to start figuring this together. So any typos, errors, inconsistencies, that's just due to lack of time. So with that in mind, let's pause right there. If we can accomplish all of this in the next 4 weeks, exciting. You guys happy about that? Is this what you want to do, or do we want to pivot a little bit?
Michael, will this file be available?
Yes, it will be incrementally available over the next 4 weeks, right? So again, I don't want to overwhelm people with everything all at once. So I will be making, pieces of this available after each week of the class. And then to Larry's point, we'll be assigning assignments to each of you throughout the week.
And let me, if I could add to that, is sort of the magic of this, is so no one falls behind and we lose people by the end, is that next week when Michael will start with a new file, we're going to post that on the website. So even if you didn't successfully, or maybe you did it wrong or differently, you can copy next week's week number 1 package. And so we're all starting together and learning on week 2, 3, 4, etc.
Yep. Okay, so given that we're on a clock and we have limited time, let's jump into the week 1 course. And this today is about basic foundation building, and particularly I want to start with a quote from Robin Sharma. Change is difficult in the beginning, messy in the middle, and glorious at the end. So it's embrace that, right? So in this, as you learn to change and as you adopt these kinds of things, that early stage may be really difficult, and then it's going to get messy, and then at the end you're going to go like, wow, this is just totally awesome. The other thing that we want to talk about when we get into this, let me go find my week 1 course here, is some of the objectives that we want to achieve. So when we think about today and what we want to accomplish, I want to give a highlight of the 4 C's of knowledge management and how do we overcome these daily silos and some incremental formalization. We'll talk about an introduction of blogging like we've discussed. And we'll briefly touch on a handful of the Tinderbox languages, notes, attributes, prototypes, and some really basic action code. That's as far as we're going to get today. But we'll see what happens. So with that in mind, let me go over here and we'll start with a basic blank file. So let's start with some brainstorming around blogging and the steps and stages in blogging. So let me start with kind of a first question for you all. Like, what do you think the, when you go to like start wanting to organize your stuff, what's your workflow for, publishing material? Anybody have an idea? Want to throw out some ideas? Like where would you start with a blank piece of file if you wanted to start writing an article, for example?
I'd start with an outline.
Okay. So you're going to start with an outline. And so that, maybe we start with the word article. Okay. And we're in map view now. And that's fine when you initially start to brainstorm. But we've got this idea called article. And then what happens next, Larry?
I just throw some ideas down, and then I try and sort of chunk them into of these 10 ideas I have, or a dozen or so. I decide which are the 4 or 5 main ones, and then make child ideas out of the other ones.
Okay. All right. So when you're first getting started with Tinderbox and you're opening up, you can start yourself in map view and just start brainstorming out. You can say, here's an idea. Here's an idea. Typically when I like to do my type of workflow management, I like to think about, buckets, where I'll start is, here's my general ideas bucket. Here's my work in progress bucket. And here is my completed, or what we'll call published bucket. Right. So I also,
Bruce,
yeah.
Just to interrupt for 1 second. So because people can't see whether you're using shortcuts or menu, can you just describe how you're creating the new boxes?
Yeah. So all I'm doing is I'm double clicking on the screen. And so when you're in map view and you want to create a new note, all you need to do is double tap on the screen and that will create a note and you can give it a title. And then if you happen to be holding on it, have a note selected like that, if you hit the enter key, it will automatically create another note. And so this is a great way to like quickly get your ideas out, as you're, really in that overall brainstorming mode. And then you can go back and circle back and clean that up. So that's how you do that. And then another trick too, is if you want to highlight a bunch of notes all at once, you hit the option key, hold down the mouse key with the option key, and you can select a bunch of notes at once. So you can manage that. So that's a little side trick there.
Peter Wasilko?
Yeah, usually I start by thinking about what tags are going to categorize the thing before I start. So I'd have a tags attribute, open a single note, and then start pecking out the tags that it's going to be classified under before I start doing anything else.
Great idea. Okay, so we have another category called tags. So as we're thinking about now how we kind of like to organize our work. We've got ideas, we've got work in progress, we've got published things, we've got tags, we've got Larry's idea, where you actually have an article and then there's ideas under that article. As I go through and thinking about this more, and again, just kind of watch how we're moving the map view around when we're organizing our initial thinking. Now, if I have an article, maybe in that article, I've got kind of what I'll call my raw data. And then I actually have, what for now, and I'm brainstorming here a little bit, I'll call it the piece, right? We actually have the article itself. And so these are all different ways of our thinking about this kind of concept. Now, map view is great for kind of spatially laying out these thoughts and ideas. But to Larry's point, sometimes when you get into a more logical approach, and I don't mean, I'm not sure what I mean by logical. I don't, but for me, that's the term that comes to mind. I like to switch structured. Maybe that's the better language. I like to switch over to my outline view, because outline view really helps. And this is one of the really great things about Tinderbox is all of your data is all there, much like what Bruce referred to earlier. It is truly this database that you can draw upon, and you can use all of these different views to look at your data from different perspectives. And that helps you generate knowledge, helps you discover insight and ideas. We're primarily going to be working in this Blogging with Tinderbox course in 2 views, outline view and map view, and primarily outline view. So what we're going to do now is we're going to switch over to outline view. There's a couple ways to do that. You can go up to the view menu in Tinderbox and select the different views, or I find it just faster to click the tab up here and then select the outline view, and you can switch back and forth between different views. So now we've just popped into outline view. And so now we're looking at this and we're like, what do I do with this? All right, well, if I remember now, I'm going to organize this. One of the key things, and we can go back and forth, one key thing to remember is your map view is spatially oriented. Your outline view is is vertically oriented. So now we can organize, where we want our things to be and how we want them to be organized. So again, I typically like to have my idea buckets up at the top. I then have, because I organize my files in the way of workflow. So here are my ideas, and so let's say this article I'm working on right now is actually, and then if you hit the tab key, I can move it into this idea container. So now I can expand and collapse this, and we'll just call this like article 1, and then for article 1, I have idea 1, I have idea 2. And so you're now starting to see, we're starting to get structure with our files. So it's not just this big holy hellacious mess of notes that are everywhere. We can start getting our structure of what's happening here. And now we've got kind of like our raw data. And so maybe what I want to do up here is I actually want to put raw data under this article and tab that in. And so now here's kind of like the notes that I'm collecting that will help me write my article. And then when I'm in my article, I actually have the piece itself. And then I want to be thinking about what's the basic organization of an article. Now, here's a really cool trick and for everyone to be keep in mind for a Tinderbox trick. If you hit the Option Shift key when you're in outline mode. Now let's stop here. If I've selected a note, so just like Bruce had asked us earlier, I'm going to pop over here and have us look in map view. By the way, this is another nice trick. You can go back and forth between the different views pretty easily in going this way. And by the way, notice here, now that we're in map view, as we started to nest some of our notes, they got, like our ideas notes just got nested in there. When you want to create a new note in outline view, if you have a note selected, all you have to do is hit enter. And that will create a note right underneath that particular note in the tree. Or if I do it here, I'll hit enter. Or if I do here, you'll see enter. It's going to create a new note underneath that next note in the outline view. If you want to create a note within the child, you hit Option Shift Enter, and that automatically adds a child note to that note. So this is a really nice way to be able to quickly create notes. And so let's think about our article. Every article has an introduction, right? And then we have the meat, and to get that next note, I'm just hitting enter like I just explained, and the conclusion. And sorry for the typo there. Okay, so now we're starting to see structure come to the way our blogging of workflow is going to work. So whenever I have a new, so let's think about this. Whenever I have a new, and I'm going to move these out to the top line. Now you see how if I go like this, I've somehow nested. Yep. So you see I've got ideas, I've got my work in progress, and I have my published, and then I've got this other group here called tags that Peter had raised. And so maybe we want to throw in a tag in here, and I'm really into privacy work, so I'll just create a tag called privacy for now. Okay, so you see I can now easily start organizing my thoughts and ideas. This is really, really a powerful approach for me. And if I think about this when I'm doing my blogging and my work, you're constantly working on different articles and different ideas on varying levels of involvement. So for the sake of argument, let's say I've got article 1 here. I'm gonna copy this whole article and paste it and move it under work in progress. And we're gonna call this one now article 2. And so now you'll see this is the article I'm actually working on today. And over here, let's say 2-3 days from now, I get a great idea from Carol Olivia. We've been talking and I'm like, oh yeah, that's going to be a good piece. So, I'll just drop into the idea bucket and say, write piece on dealing with grade books. Okay, so I'll park that up.
Michael, while you're working, there's just a few comments that are building up. That I'm just going to quickly
summarize. Please interrupt away.
So first of all, Dave highlighted that as you were talking, that the key concept, and people can follow in chat, of Tinderbox is that it's the fundamental unit is the note. However, every note can be a container. So when you're talking about buckets, that you were being a little bit literal in that a note can be a container for other notes.
Correct. So a note is a note, and what we'll call a container or a folder, that is essentially a note with other notes in it. Okay. So we've got about 12 minutes left in this course. And so let me move on. So essentially what you see, this is a note, this is a note, this is a note. This happens to be a note with notes inside of it. And this is a note with notes inside of it. So you're starting to see this structure and this organization start to emerge. Now, one of the beautiful things I really like about Tinderbox as you're setting up the foundation for your work and organizing your work and having some form of workflow is really, really powerful and important. And like next week, we'll talk about how to capture more of your ideas and organize them and bring them in. But you're starting to see we're having kind of similar constructs. And what's challenging too is how do I distinguish this note here, I'll call my ideas. And now I'm starting to think, okay, ideas actually is not just ideas. Ideas is an ideas folder, right? I want this note to actually be a folder. And this work in progress is going to be a work in progress folder. And so the purpose of this note, its existence in life, is to contain other notes. And so it's really a folder. And again, this one I'm going to call the published folder. Now, some of the things what we want to start thinking about now is how do we start organizing this view to make our work a little easier to understand and to look at. So we're going to jump into some in the last kind of 11 minutes, we're going to jump into some other really critical things that we want to think about when it comes to organizing our notes. So far, when you look at our notes, all we have are a bunch of notes, and those notes have a title, also known as $name in the language of attributes, which we'll talk about in just a minute, and a text area where I can actually put information in about that particular note. And remember, this is just about basic foundation setting, getting the foundation of our work. And if I go back to my work I've been recently doing with Larry, it took us, he has a really complex expert witness program he's doing. And it took us about 4 hours or more, maybe 5.5. to get this foundation right for his project. It took 3 sessions of us going back and forth and ideating. Larry, how do you work? How do your files organized? How do you think? What do you like to capture? And then once we got the foundation right, then the work started to come. And so as Einstein is so obviously famously quoted at, if you only give me an hour to solve something, I'm going to spend 45 to 50 minutes of it, making sure I understand the question first. So this foundation setting activity is really a part about your understanding how you might want to go about organizing your data. Now, it's critical, though, to realize that you can always change and incrementally formalize your structure as time goes on, and that will be expected. So with that in mind, let's start formalizing this a little bit more and making it just visually easier for us to be able to understand that. So what I'm going to do is I'm now going to go up to the note section and create what I call collect note, and then say create separator. And what a separator note is just that. It's a note that allows you to kind of in the outline view, create a separator amongst other notes. So you can start organizing that outline view a little bit more. Now, when you pop over to map view, you can't see separators. They don't exist. And there are more details there, but we have less time and only about 9 minutes left in this session. So
Michael, I want to interject because I'm in the role that you assigned. I'm watching what's happening in chat. And I think that as ambitious as the agenda is for today, I'm going to suggest that just for today, we slow down and we just focus on what you're doing in notes, because it's both very useful and there are a ton of comments that are not being addressed. So
It's
since
true. First chat is just speeding the heck up.
yeah, so the chat is about to boil over. So what's happening is, if you move away from this topic, I think that you'll create an inadvertent disconnect. You have really hit the pulse of what people are interested in. And so I want to suggest that we start going through some of the chat notes. And I also, unless someone objects, I know that you said 20 minutes. I want to suggest we go to 30 minutes. Because
that the 30 minutes does give us 8 minutes. We've already gone over 20, so we're doing our 20 to 30. So we can and we can take it. We can push it longer if we like, but that's fine.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think whatever it takes, because we, as Bruce is saying, we've hit gold here.
Okay.
Yes. So I think if we just stick with notes, I know you had 3 more topics on there. We are not going to get to action code today.
Well, no, and we don't need to, but I do want to stick to notes, and I do want to show something else though that's really important.
I know. So let's go through chat, because otherwise there'll be a disconnect between you and your audience.
Sure. No, I appreciate that. So can someone else moderate the questions? Yeah, please go for it, Christoph. You're on mute, Christoph. Can't hear you.
Whenever you are started there, how to start with a map or with the outline, I found myself very much in the outline type. I'm doing much the same thing as you, but then I wondered, actually every node is also like a piece where you can write something. It's not only the container. So I find myself that 90% of the time I'm just writing an outline and have nothing in the notes besides later on when I want to connect them with action code or blah, blah, blah. And so that is sort of, I think I'm making a mistake in collecting the ideas. Maybe it would be better to have some part happening in the notes, which you later can always explode and split and so forth. But I feel like I'm misusing Tinderbox by just writing everything in the outline, which also has the disadvantage spelling correction doesn't work and so forth, which would nicely happen in the note itself. But
okay, I want you to be careful with that, and also that's for next week, right?
Just one sec, Michael, if I can just cut in. Detlef is sort of asking the same questions in chat. About what Christoph is asking, which is like, when I create a note, how the heck am I going to remember that, oh, this was an important thing? And I'm just trying to point out that, hey, you can, there's several ways you can do it. You can do it through attributes at the time you create the note. You can iconize, or you can create agents that go,
But we are getting a bit ahead of the lesson though. I mean, so one of the things that I've learned and what I've done with Larry is, and let me take a big step back. And Larry, you can quote me on this, but when we first started the Larry, I said, Larry, I'm going to take you for a ride and trust me, right? It's going to make sense. And you are going to see stuff you don't understand immediately. And we can always circle back to it. But until you get to this foundational work, you're never going to get productive. And I think that's part of the problem that a lot of people have with Tinderbox is they never can get to that point of like, I'm productive and I can actually be doing really work, which then reinforces the desire to then go back and relearn some of this stuff to be even more productive. So I think, again, I purposefully organized this first class to just focus on basic structure. And you're right, Christoph, using notes and using attributes, that's coming, but we've got to get this basic structural discussion done first.
So we can do one of two things, because the last thing I would want to do, Michael, is interfere. I mean, you're putting a lot of time and effort into this. I don't think we need to go through everything in chat. I would just like to hit a couple of questions. And then what I want to ask is those people who are more experienced with Tinderbox, if you could be answering some of these chat questions that are coming up so we don't keep pulling Michael away. But
yeah, that would be great. And I heard just
sorry, one sec. I think that's not working, because what happens is chat is going in one direction and Michael's going in the other, and so I cannot even focus on Michael.
So Michael, would it be okay with what Art is saying? Would it be okay with you if we kind of, maybe for today, because it's the very first time doing it, I think if people could have their questions answered in chat in one way or another, whether it's after your formal presentation, that would be fine. We could go back.
And that's why we have the last 30 minutes.
I don't want to ignore it.
Right. But that's too why we designed the last 30 minutes for open discussion. When we have open discussion, if we want to discuss about the class we just had, that's fine. Or if we want to discuss about other things that we want, that's fine. But I think one of the challenges we have with Tinderbox is we're all coming to this with our different levels of experience. And then we all want to, and that's where we get distracted in some of these meetups, because then we go agents this and, crazy stuff that Tom and I did earlier this week, that, and it makes everybody get lost. So the whole goal today is just talk about foundation.
A bunch of people are saying,
while you, Art, and I are talking, 18 more messages have shown up.
Okay. Beautiful.
So
I'm loving it.
Just to give it a little, but
everybody's asking for after the presentation, by the way.
Okay. All right. So let's go back to
suggest. Go ahead, Michael. You just do what you want to do, and then we'll address chat.
So let's go back to where we're at and reset where we've done. So what we've been doing thus far is just basically barfing our brain onto a page, right? For whatever sake or however we want to do it, we're getting ideas out on the page. And we started getting those ideas out on the page in map view, as we showed you. And now what we're starting to do is we're going back and forth between map view and outline view, getting those ideas a little bit more hierarchically structured. Really, really important point. Just be, like one Detlef's question, like, how do I know what's important and what's not, right? That's all going to incrementally evolve over time as you build your file. And it's not going to happen in minutes. As we just started this class with today, it takes concerted, focused effort, time over time, with a mentor like me, with focused sessions of I'm intending to learn this to become an expert in anything, right? We're not going to do it in 20 minutes. It's going to take time, but let's go to the next step. So what we've accomplished thus far is we've started to kind of think about our workflow for blogging, where we have ideas, we have articles we're currently working on. We can throw in, just for the sake of this demonstration, we can say, here's article number 4, right? So we've got article 4 we're working, we have 2 articles we're actually working on in production. We've got a couple of ideas that we want to brainstorm. In my personal blogging Tinderbox file, this ideas folder's got like 75 items in it. Some of them are just one-liners. Other of them are half-baked, half-written stuff, basically like what Christoph's talking about. Whole helly mess. When I move stuff into the workflow, work in progress bucket, it starts to incrementally get a bit more organized. And then when it gets to published, I'll just manually move that stuff over. And yes, Peter and others that are really at the cutting edge of Tinderbox, you can have all of this stuff automatically move around and get colored and changed. But we're going to get to that by class 4, I promise. Today's just about foundation settings. So here you'll see we've got our articles kind of generally structured. And the other nice thing when you're doing it in the way I'm suggesting is when you're first getting started, just kind of getting your buckets in a row, your containers in a row, your ideas formalized is super helpful. And this is like what we did with Bruce yesterday. He started out with what we had earlier. And then within about 20 minutes, we had his thing organized. So let me take you to the next step of organization. So in Tinderbox, there is this unbelievably important concept. And I'm actually going to take, because you can't see my menus, I'm going to take a quick screenshot and drop it into this note so you see it. So I'm going to the file menu now, and I'm going file, built-in prototypes, and I'm going to randomly select one of the prototypes. I habitually just select person because it works for me. This is how I generate the prototype file in my Tinderbox. You can manually do it. I'm not going to teach you that because it's too complicated. So what I'm going to do is I'm now going to go to File, Built-in Prototypes, and select the person prototype. And Tinderbox automatically adds in what's called a prototype. Now think of a prototype like and I don't want to use the word template, but I'm going to. A Tinderbox is like a template for notes as opposed to a template for publishing, which we'll come to later. It's a template for notes. It's the way you want notes to look. So for example, you'll see here, I've selected all of these notes. These notes have no visual attributes. There's no text in them, anything. The second I go create a new note, and when I'm blogging too, I just had another inspirational idea, people, right? When I'm blogging, there often will be people that I might want to be aware of. And in fact, I want to create a people folder because maybe there's acknowledgement, like I acknowledged Larry earlier. I want to give him some ideas. So we're going to run about another 10 minutes long in this, and we'll pause and then go back to Q&A. So you'll see I've got this people folder here now that I've created. And I'm going to now hit Option Shift Command like I showed you before. And I'm going to type Bruce Gale. Okay. So I'm going to create now a note for this guy called Bruce Gale, right? And if I go look at the person prototype, well, wait a minute, what just happened? Well, first and foremost, when you look at Tinderbox, if it's a prototype, it's got this little green hazy thing on it. And when you look at it, and also this prototype has this little icon here, a badge, that's what we call a badge. And you'll see it's green. We're going to get to all of those other details again later. We're just foundation setting. Don't worry about how yet. We're learning about what. I'll teach you how later. You'll notice all of a sudden the person prototype had all of these attributes appear. Now, an attribute is essentially, and this is what like Bernardo calls metacognition. An attribute are basically the parts of things. So if you think about a note in Tinderbox like a cell, right? The cell has its nucleus. That's kind of like the text. The cell has all of these other protons and electrons and other stuff moving around. I'm getting my biology and physics mixed up. You'll see, that's like the name of a note. And so, and every note has every attribute in it, whether or not it's displayed or not. So I'm going to do something else and just show you really quick. I'm going to hit Command 1, which is going to open up what's called the document inspector. And the document inspector is your friend. And if you click on this right here, the document inspector, and you look at user attributes, this is where we will create our own attributes. And we're going to create 2 today that I'm going to show you, and then we'll do more next week. And then this is where you have all your system attributes. Now, the beautiful thing about Tinderbox is this concept of attributes. An attribute is basically what's called a key pair. It's got a label and it's got values. And Tinderbox uses those values in it to, for example, the attribute color, it will use those values to do what it needs to do or want. So let me go over here and just show you really quick. So you see here, I'm going to click on the note Bruce Gale, and I'm going to go here and type the word color. You'll see the color is 7. That's Tinderbox's default color for a note. If I go click on the person attribute, you're now going to see, well, wait a minute. This person note's green, right? That's why this note's becoming green. So the value of the note green, and let me show you here. And again, today don't worry about what I'm doing, just see what's happening. I'm trying to get some key concepts across. If I type in the color green here, I'm looking at the values of the attribute in the inspector. I'm also looking at the valid attributes in what we call the displayed attribute. And you see this color green. So this is telling Tinderbox when the value of the attribute color is equal to green, turn the note green. Okay. So that tells you a little bit about attributes. You're going to learn more about them in just a few minutes. So the concept of a prototype is essentially you can create like a template for other notes. And now watch this. I'm going to come over to the Bruce Gale note, and I'm going to right mouse click on that icon there, and it says person. Well, that's the person prototype. And watch what happens. The second I click person, it's going to apply all of the attributes, all of the values that are associated with the prototype person, and assign them to that note, Bruce Gale. So now I've got this note. And so I can say Bruce's first name, his full name is Bruce, and such. You can, but he's down in LA, right? And so you can start adding values to that note. Now, here's a really important concept. Look here, the prototype person's a template. Its values are independent. I've now started to make this note Bruce Gale unique by giving it unique values. Okay, I want to slow down and not overwhelm you with a little bit more. Let's create our own first prototype. So in the prototype folder, I'm going to go ahead and hit enter, and that's going to create a new prototype for me. And I'm going to call this prototype P folder. Okay, and we're going to just do a couple really simple things. I want to go ahead and select what we call the badge here, and I'm going to select the folder icon in the badge. So I've now just created my first prototype note. Now, the reason why I did that is visually, I want my Tinderbox file, the foundational organizational structure of my work product here, to help me visually understand and distinguish some notes versus other notes and their functions for me in the way I use Tinderbox for this particular project file. So I'm going to go up here, and just like we did with Bruce Gale, the person, I'm going to assign this to all the folders. So now we very quickly can see within Tinderbox, I've got these folders that are holding. I've got my ideas folder, my work in progress folder, my publish folder, my tags folder, and my people folder. And so you now instantly go from that kind of messy list of uncoordinated notes to some visual structure that helps us understand and manage our program. And if we pop over to our map view, you can now see I've got my ideas, my work in progress, my publish, my tags. We can move our prototypes down here, and you'll see that the badge also is now displayed when I'm in map view. So that badge is super helpful to help you kind of intellectually structure your thoughts and your ideas on how you go about leveraging and using your Tinderbox file. Now, a couple other things that I want to talk about when we're in this prototype. So when we're thinking about what we've been doing in our blogging, we've also come up with a couple of other ideas, right? So we've got this concept we call articles, and Peter thankfully came up with this other concept called tags. Well, structurally, what does that mean to me? Well, structurally, what that means to me is I've got a couple more prototypes to create. I've got things I call articles. That's all P article. And I've got things called P tags, right? So I've got notes that I want to have imbued with unique special values that are related, that I want to be calling articles and tags. Now, this is where I want some group and user participation. What's some information that you would want to know about an article that you're writing? And let me start with a couple myself. Now, there's a couple ways to create user attributes. I'm going to show you the easiest way to do this now. You can go up to this, what's called the displayed attributes button here, and I'm going to click here, and it's going to give you this blank box. And again, this is part of your incremental formalization. This is part of your logic. This is part of your thinking. We're going to go back later in the next future weeks to show you how to readjust your thinking. But as I'm creating my file, I'm thinking about, well, what do I want to know about articles? Well, the first one, I want to know what type is it, right? And what I mean by type is I want to know, is this a bite, a snack, or a meal? Is this a short piece of content? Is this a full article, or is this a meal? I'm going to organize that type. The other thing I might want to know is I want my articles to be organized by the status. What are they? Are they work in progress? Are they published? Are they complete? That's going to help me understand that. And I think somebody else in the forum said, well, they're also interested, like, what's important to me? So I also want to note about priority, right? Is this an article that I'm working on that I have to get done now? Or maybe it's just an idea I want to deal with later. What's something else that you might want to know about your articles? Like maybe
due date.
Due date. All right. Due date. How about something else? Maybe you're starting
title. Topic, genre.
Title? Well, we have title because title is already there. It's already named. It's already a named attribute.
You can go into genre or topic or style if it's an essay or is it a letter or whatever.
Okay, so you could do style. That's fine. And you could do genre. Now, genre, I would argue. Now, this is where we're going to, later in future weeks, we're going to get into like, what's the difference between a tag and a genre, right? But because you could actually have your tags be genres. And let's just do that for now. What was the one I just deleted? Oh, shoot. I just undid everything. So let's see, and that's fine. We'll go, we had priority, we had type, we had status, we had genre.
In response
due date. I think you could have done undo and you might have got all those back. I'm not sure though.
Yeah, that's fine. That's fine. I didn't want to waste time figuring it out. So essentially what you've done, and you'll see here too. So Tinderbox already has an attribute called due date. That's a system attribute that Mark's put in because it's used for other purposes too. But you'll notice none of these other ones I've created here have been checked in any way. What that means is we're creating them in real time. We're creating what we call user attributes. So I'm now going to click away, and it's going to pop up this box right here. Let me extend that over so you guys can see it. And it's now going to ask me, well, what do you want to do with these words that you've just stuck in there? What kind of attributes are these? Again, we're going to get into the details later. Priority, we're going to make that a number, because we want to be able to have our articles prioritized 1 through 4. Really important to not so important. Type, we're going to make that a set, because
typo on status, Michael. Sorry.
What?
Typo on status.
Oh yeah, I can fix that in just a second. I'll show you how to do that in a minute. And then genre is also going to be a set. So essentially what we're going to say is type is like, is it a link? Is it a bite, a snack, or a meal? Status, or status as it's spelled wrong, is going to be, is it done? Is it work in progress? Is it labeled? And genre is a class or information that we want to do. Now, here's a great thing about Tinderbox, again, an incremental formalization. So I've done that, and it's now automatically created all of those attributes for me, but I need to go fix that typo that I just interjected. So I open up the document inspector by hitting Command-1. I can go over here, click on the user attribute, and then remember, before that was blank. We just created our first 4 own user attributes, and it's no longer blank. Now I can come here and fix the spelling error. Now watch what happens. Hit enter, and guess what? It automatically got fixed. So again, we're still in our foundation setting. So I've created this item called article. Now, again, I love the visual sense of the article. So I want to go here to symbols, and for me, I want my articles to be that little icon there. And so then I can go up and I can have, and if you want to select multiple notes at once, by the way, you can click a note. If you hit the shift key, you'll select multiple notes at once, and you'll watch this. I can now, and remember before that was just person, but we've now created more attributes. And so the attribute list is growing. And so I can say articles, and I've now just got my articles. And look, all of these now, like this article has nothing. This article does. And if I go up here and now make that an article, and then I can make that an article. And so you see now, and then I'm going to go ahead and make that a tag, and we'll organize that later. So now watch what here. So I made this one a tag. And this, actually, I'm going to do it again. I've made this one a tag. And so it's now associated with the tag attribute, but the tag attribute has no terminology to it. Let me watch what happens here. Let me go ahead and add tags just for fun. Now, if I go back to this note, it now has tags. So that's the beautiful thing with prototypes. Anything you adjust to a prototype, and unless you've broken inheritance, which we'll explain later, will happen to your other notes. And you'll start seeing now in the last, say, 25, 30 minutes, we have gone a little long. What you've seen is we've gone from a blank page to rather a foundation for a blogging effort where I now can start writing, and I can now start organizing my thoughts. And functionally now, the way you can use this file is when you have ideas, you dump them into the ideas folder. When you have work in progress, you can just move it from here to here. And now this item, tab in, this item is now an article you're actively working on. When you finish that article, you can just move it here and you've finished. And you've now basically built the foundation of a blogging workflow for yourself. Now, could you automate this? Can you make it cleaner? Can you make it more functional? Absolutely. And this is going to be the last piece I want to share with you in today's lesson to make this a little easier in your organizational structure. Now, remember, I told you earlier, if I hit Option Shift Enter, that creates a new note. And so I can create a new note here, and we'll call it like Article 5. Okay. Now, I created a new note, but the challenge is, well, why didn't it take on my articleness, from the sense of a prototype? And this is yet the next thing, and the last thing I want to teach you in today's lesson, and then we'll do a summary, is Tinderbox has a capability called action code. And what action code does is what it's in the name. It allows you to perform actions based on values that are in its attributes. And so what I do, there is a attribute in Tinderbox called the OnAdd. And the OnAdd attribute allows you to trigger action code, meaning when you take this action, i.e. adding something to a note, I want you to perform a particular function. And so I'm going to now in the prototype, I'm doing OnAdd because of this concept called inheritance. If you look, every one of my my folders now have the OnAdd attribute displayed so we can work on them. And now let me show you what I want to do. This is going to be your first step to learning action code. And you'll get more of this later. I'm going to type $prototype. Okay. Now, whenever you're referring to a attribute in Tinderbox in any form of code, you put a $sign in front of it. That tells Tinderbox, hey, this is not the word prototype. This is designated. This word is actually specifically being designated to the attribute named prototype. And so that's why, so Tinderbox looks for that $sign to say, hey, this word is a prototype. It's not just the word prototype. And so what I'm going to say is in this OnAdd, I want to say, I want to make the prototype of any note added to this folder equal to the prototype of P article. And again, in that regard, then, and this is where Mark Bernstein's genius comes into play. You know, we all have gotten so scared of this thing called code because it doesn't look like code to us. But if you just read it like English, it will make sense. So what I'm going to say, I want to make the prototype equal to, right? Well, what do I want to make it equal to? Well, I want to make it equal to P article. And then you put a semicolon. So what I'm saying here is when I add something to this folder, make your prototype equal to the prototype named P article. All right. And then you end an expression with a semicolon. Again, over the next 4 weeks, you'll learn more about this as we do more. Now watch what happens. Remember before when I hit Shift Option and Enter to create this article 5 here in this model, watch what happens now. If I hit Option Shift Enter, it's now automatically been imbued with the prototype article. So now I can say article 6. And it has all of the prototypes. And this is where I can start saying the genre. Maybe it's mystery, right? And I can say it's a priority 2 article. And it's going to be due, next Friday. And the status is draft. Or in this case, the status is idea. I'm sorry, Peter? So let me pause right there. We've gone a little bit long, but essentially what we've just done, and this is all I wanted to accomplish for today's lesson. And now we can go into the Q&A and discussion sessions. What we've done is we've set the foundation for your blogging project. And essentially what we've done is we've demonstrated how you can create notes, how you can organize those notes in both map view and in outline view, how you can add badges to create visual help to help you visually organize your thinking, how you can utilize prototypes to be able to help you kind of start automatically organizing those notes, and how you can start creating user attributes to start capturing information about that's unique about that note. So again, what's interesting about this note, Article 6 is an idea, but over here in Article 12, the status of this one, we're going to say is in progress. Right? So later, when we get into agents and when we get into other automations that Tinderbox affords us, and when we get into other action codes, I'm going to demonstrate to you how you can utilize the information that's in here to make distinctions. So for example, next week, what we'll show you is, because this says idea, we can make idea notes one color, and we can make work in progress notes another color. We can make notes with that are priority 1 with a different flag or a different badge or a different color, some way to help you distinguish to somebody else's comments in the forum, just help distinguish visually what's important, what's not important, where it goes. But what we've accomplished in the last 35 minutes or so is essentially establishing the foundation for you to help organize your projects within Tinderbox. So let me pause there. What are thoughts, ideas, questions? What do we need to go back over?
Michael, I just want to speak for everyone for a moment. I don't know if you paid attention, but there are 48 participants online, and you have just taught a master class. So you've just taught lesson 1 of the master class that I think is really moving at a pace where people are going to get it. And I think that a lot of really interesting projects are going to come from this. Chat, thank you. Definitely, you're welcome. Chat has absolutely exploded. I am not going to, for a second, try and go through all of it. I do want to highlight, but then I also want to suggest that if people want to formulate some questions to ask Michael, let's go ahead and make sure that the various things that he covered just for today are crystal clear. And then if anybody is unclear after today, all you need to do is post it on the forum. Just refer back to today's meetup, refer to this, post your question, and I guarantee you're going to get an answer.
Well, actually, I've already got this set up. when this meeting's done, I'm going to upload this file we just did, and it's going to say Meetup September 18, 2021 class, blogging basic with Tinderbox. And this is where we're going to have our conversation for the next week. And your assignment, if you so choose, and ideally it would be really fun if everyone could upload their own version of their assignment by like next Friday, just to see what work everyone's done. Your assignment next week is to come up with your own cut at what we did here. Like what works for you. Like I'm crazy interested to see what you're going to come up with, Art, as a poet and writer. I mean, you're going to come up with different folder structure, different maybe attributes, the way you want to be organizing or managing your files. So your exercise, all of your assignments for this week is basically follow what we just did. Open up a blank file, drop in some notes, brainstorm a little bit, and then start thinking, how do I want this organized? What's the basic structure that's going to help me keep all of this straight? And then create yourself a couple prototypes, assign those to those notes, and then do at least one OnAdd, right? So you can assign a prototype. And then again, we'll make it more complicated later. And then any questions you have, we can have that conversation in the forum, as Bruce said.
So just one question has come up in a few different ways, and it has to do with the ability to see two views at once. And there have been a few different comments and suggestions. Art made the comment that you can open a new window and you can see map view next to your outline view. Mark B made a comment about opening a second window versus switching tabs. Do you want to comment on that?
I would love to comment on that. All right, so now we're getting into some navigation functions. Again, class is over, right? Because I do want to stay focused. Class is over for this particular project. Now we're going to get into open discussion, and we can do what we normally do. And but let me show you how there's a bunch of ways I do that. So I'm in map view. If I just want to focus on like this article right now, there's two approaches that I might take in doing this. Approach number one is I'll select Article 6. I'll right mouse click on Article 6, and I'll go down into Open into New Tab, right? I do that. Now I've got a third tab, and now I'm just looking at Article 6. And then I can give some like introduction, body, conclusion, right? So now I can start working on my Article 6. Okay, so the nice thing about that, what that allows me to do is it allows me to not get distracted by all of this, right? I'm going to say, okay, I got to work on Article 6. I want to focus. I want to get everything out of the way. Let me go just work on Article 6. But I can always go pop back over here if I need to look at something. So that's the value of doing that. The other way, and another neat trick in Tinderbox, is if I don't really care about going back to the particular tab I'm on, I can, if you see the icon right here, if I double click on this, it will automatically push everything up. And so now I can just focus on Article 6. So I'm not opening up another tab. I'm just drilling right into that article. And then using the breadcrumbs, I can always go back if I want. So those are the two approaches I use.
Sorry to interrupt. May I just suggest, Michael, that at the very end of the session, what you were doing was when you added the attribute for the OnAdd. I think a lot of the early users got a little confused because basically you're combining two processes into one there. Not only are you actually doing the OnAdd action, but you're also doing it by way of putting up in the display expression. So a few people are, I think, maybe a little confused as to whether you're doing one or two things.
Yeah, so let's talk about that a little bit. And by the way, I forgot to do this in the beginning, and I do want to circle back to this. As part of the foundational setting, another piece of your homework this week is I really would encourage, and again, let me, just so I remember, I'm going to go here, and as part of the work, I'm going to put this in here, and I'm going to say homework, right? And one of your homeworks is going to be is to read this article. Right. And this is an article I wrote a couple of weeks back about my 4 C's of knowledge management and how I got here over the last year. This is going to be really helpful for you as you go through this. what Tinderbox allows you to do. So you've all heard about the Zettelkasten process and other methodologies of note taking. What I'm demonstrating is really just simply what is a modern day implementation of what, many thought leaders have started back in the 1600s, and what Nicholas Luhmann in the 50s popularized is what we've just started demonstrating is this ability to collect notes, to curate notes. This is all and maybe a little bit creation, but we've really not done creation today. We're just formalizing. And what we've done today is we've collected some notes and we started to curate them. And what we've done in the nature of curation is really all we've done today in the sense of curation is a hierarchical outline and a badge for either distinguishing articles and folders. Now, what you're going to learn over the next 4 weeks is that you're able to collect some notes, curate those notes. As you're going through that curation process, you'll start creating your own unique ideas and or additional new ideas, which will lead to further collection and further curation. This is the process where value is created in knowledge management. Once that value needs to be presented to somebody, you move into the contribution stage, where you then can use Tinderbox to publish your thoughts, to create your ideas and share them with the world. And again, what's beautiful about Tinderbox is when you get into the contribution stage, and I'll demonstrate this to you at some other time, you can publish out of Tinderbox to Microsoft Word, to an Excel file, to a PowerPoint file, to a PDF, to a web page. You can publish in any format you want. That's later. Right now, we're just focused on this. So that your homework's going to be to review this and comment on this article. So if we go back to what Art just brought up, really, really important ideas. Okay, so I'm going to bring the document inspector back over, and this is your friend. Remember, what's really powerful about Tinderbox is everything you're seeing here is in the background, simply a flat file of values is one way to look about it. And then the application Tinderbox will then access that file of information. It's basically an XML structure, but I don't want to overwhelm you with that, to be able to display it and make us do all of these actions. So when I look at this function called OnAdd, and again, this is something, Tom, I'm going to pick on you a little bit. Tom and I've been working on the language. He calls every attribute a displayed attribute. And the funny thing about that is it's really easy to do that when you're thinking about the nature of attributes, because that's what you see, and you see the tip of the iceberg. Every note has every attribute. I can assign any attribute I want to this note. It can be color. All right. It can be, I don't know, type, status. I'm just randomly thinking stuff up, right? It spells type, status, right? So
I think the other Mark's description of it, comparing it to a spreadsheet, was really helpful last week.
Yeah, I agree, but we don't have enough time for that. And but the idea is, if you think about, and let's just do that. This is a nice way of looking at Tinderbox too. If you think at the end of the day, an attribute are the names. So this would be status, type, priority, and this is note name, note name, note name, note name. So Tinderbox behind the scenes is basically this. It's a bunch of rows with notes. And the rows are the name, and then this would be, in the context of Tinderbox, this would be name, and this would be text. Okay, so in Tinderbox, essentially, when you first create a note, when I first create a note in Tinderbox, and I see this, here's text, here's the name. When you're looking at a spreadsheet, this note would be this cell right here. When you're then looking at all of these other values that we have in Tinderbox, it's nothing more than, these value key pairs between this is the note and that's the attribute. This is the note and that's the attribute. That's all it's doing at a very simplistic level in the background. The magic is all of the action code and export code and all of the UI you're seeing here and all the tools that Mark has given us to be able to transform our knowledge into actually something meaningful beyond the what I call the puppy mill software that is Microsoft Excel. So let's go back to what Art was asking us before. And then we've got 9 minutes left to wrap up today. So the key lesson that I wanted to share with you today was this idea called, and we don't want some of this. Yeah, that's fine. So the key idea here in the folder is I want the prototype folder to have the attribute OnAdd displayed. Now, remember when I told you about earlier that Tinderbox uses attributes to actually perform its function. So if I'm in the document inspector and I go to quick stamp and I say displayed attributes, the attribute to display an attribute is an attribute. So if I click here, you'll see here, the attribute displayed attributes has the name OnAdd listed into it. That's why OnAdd is displayed here. If I go to person, the attribute displayed attribute for the person prototype has full name and organization. These are all attribute names that are telling Tinderbox display these attributes here. Okay, so that's another way of attributes are working. Now let's go back to the OnAdd question. So all I've done is I've told Tinderbox, I want you to display the OnAdd function so that when I'm actually in looking at one of my, what I'll call my functional notes, I want to be able to modify that quickly in this note. Now, if I go to the document inspector and I look at the, let me see where it is. Okay. And I go to the little Death Star over here, and some of your versions, I'm in a later version. Some of your versions, this is still a gear. On my UI, it's a Death Star. And you'll look here. What am I seeing here? I'm seeing the attribute OnAdd having this value $prototype equals P article. I'm on my document inspector and I'm seeing the value in this action prototype equals art P article. This is your first kind of step. And I want you all to do this next week. So by the end of the next week, none of you can say, I don't code. You do this, you now code. You're a beginner coder, but you're now coding. And I guarantee you, if you follow methodically the process that we're going to be doing over the next 4 weeks and then continue with that, you're going to do some really crazy stuff. Like in our last 5 minutes, I just want to show you how cool this can be with something that Tom and I built in less than a half an hour this week. All of you can code. All of you can do this if you read English or because it's an English language. So all I'm saying is prototype equals P article. That's the action code. And what I'm telling Tinderbox to do, the OnAdd function, and let me take a step back. You've got this syntax, the coding language called action code, which we'll go through in more detail. There are different actions that you can do. There's the OnAdd action. So when you're on a note, the action OnAdd is performing that function. There's another function too called remove. Any action code I have in the attribute, and let's say we put on a remove here. Any action code I have in the remove function, on remove, sorry. Any action code I have on the on remove function would change that note. So maybe what we do this, watch what happens. I'm going to copy this over here and I'm going to say on remove, I want you to take away the prototype. So I'm going to remove article 6 from the folder. And look, its prototype just got taken away. I'm going to put it back. OnAdd, on remove, right? So all I'm doing is I'm telling Tinderbox with action code, when you do this, when this happens, I want you to perform this action for me. So what I'm saying in this folder is when I add something to this folder, make its prototype equal to what? P article. That's all I'm doing. And in the syntax of the Tinderbox language is prototype equals, and then you put it in quotes so that Tinderbox can process it, the name of a specific thing. Now, there's more advanced things we can do, like giving it paths and all of that, but that's more advanced stuff. We'll do it for later. What we're just saying is make prototype equal to the note named P article, quote, and then you end an expression with a semicolon. That's it. You all can do this.
Not to confuse anyone, but you might, sorry, go ahead, Bruce.
No, Art, finish your comment.
I was just going to say, you might want to add the ideas folder prototype in your prototypes list. And then, so every time you have a folder, like a larger folder, it'll automatically have the OnAdd and on remove. So the users will get to understand, oh, this is what he's doing.
Well, I did. What do
Okay.
you mean?
Yeah, you did that. Sorry.
I
Yeah,
did. I did it right.
But
Yeah,
then
okay.
to update, yeah, exactly. That.
All right.
in
So
the
now to
process.
update it, and then again, that's getting into a concept called inheritance. But
So, Michael,
yeah,
because time is limited, I have scanned all of the chat messages, and there are just 3 broad concepts that I'm wondering if I might ask you about on behalf of the group.
sure.
Okay, so number 1, I know it's basic, but would you describe your use of separators in outline? And
For sure.
When a separator can be used versus not used.
Okay, well, you use separators just for your own, but I mean, you don't need it. Like, look, I'm gonna delete it, right? I don't need a separator, but just look what it did, right? Not having the separator, I lost the structure of the file. Prototypes aren't my functioning notes. All of these are my functioning notes. So I put in the separator so that way I know that prototypes are what I call TBX config notes and other stuff. All my templates, everything that's functional for my file, I put down here below background. So that tells my brain to ignore it, right? When I'm actually creating my content, it's everything above here. That's how and why I use them.
And someone can actually add a separator from the menu.
Yeah, so as I mentioned earlier, let me show you that. If I go to note, and I'll take a screenshot because that seemed to work earlier. If you go to, come on.
And so separators are view only. They can't appear in maps, for example. It's
correct.
Only
and there's something else. So if you go to note, create separator. That's how you create a separator. Okay. Now, one thing I will show you, and this will scare you. And I guarantee it will scare you the first time. I freaked out the first time this happened to me. I went to note, create separator. Now watch what happens. I'm going to go look at this in map view. So here's my map view and all my ideas. This is just a little landmine I'm trying to protect you from. Let's say I'm now going to move all of these notes into the separator, right? And so now in the outline view, that seems really convenient, because now I can collapse these. But when you do that and you go to map view, oh my God, all my notes disappeared, right? Because the separator concept doesn't port over into map view, and it doesn't really have that expand collapse. And you're thinking, oh my God, I just destroyed my file. All my notes are gone. No, they're not. All you need to do is hit Shift Tab and move them back out of the separator, right? And then when you go back, there are your notes again.
Oh yeah,
Right,
I had a question.
That's just a little landmine to keep yourselves from
so
on.
There were 3 areas. So go ahead.
Sorry. I had a freak out question on this as well. Like, if you put your prototypes container into another container, that doesn't
it won't work.
Right?
It won't work, because Tinderbox will always look for the prototypes at root level. So if I do this, it breaks all the prototypes.
Right. I just wanted to point out that.
Well, it doesn't break them, but Tinderbox won't be able to find them.
So I think Mark Bernstein has a comment.
Yeah, please, Mark.
Please. That's not in fact the case.
Okay.
Prototypes can be anywhere. The built-in prototypes are always made at the top level, and I generally suggest that you keep your prototypes neatly in the prototypes folder. But if you have a reason for not doing it, Tinderbox will find your prototypes wherever they are.
Yeah, I have. And we don't need to talk about it right now, Mark, but I have found, like, if I nest them under here, functionality doesn't work. And maybe we can talk about that at another time.
Let's offload that for the moment, because there's 2 other things that I want to hit on just before we stop. The second one is, Michael, you used the word folder, and some people commented about how that appears redundant because you have the icon folder, and other people commented that it's actually helpful because if you take it out of the Tinderbox environment, then you know what's at the folder level versus what is a detail. Any comments on that?
Yeah, my comment is that's just your semantics, like what works for your brain, what's helpful. I mean, and again, I've got a bunch of other things I can talk about. Like, I also use prefixes on file notes. I've got a very complex system that works for me. But you're right. But again, this is part of the incremental formalization. When we started, we didn't have that badge there. So the folder name was helpful. But now that we've got folder names and those are there for us, we can easily just go like this and delete it, right? Because I don't need that word anymore. And that's a great example of incremental formalization. I now no longer need that appendix. I can take it out, and your file is going to be fine without it.
Well, and also you can use it, and you can go like, well, if you put an agent in and goes, if it sees the word folder, then give it.
Yeah,
something.
I do that in different ways, but yeah, but you can also use the name folder, and in agents you can also then, is a prototype folder and all that, but that's for a more advanced topic.
Yeah, no, but I think you're right. Your key point is that it's up to your personal paradigm, what you're accustomed to.
Exactly. The one last thing I did want to say, just to reinforce one more thing before we leave. Remember, I had this OnAdd prototype equals P article. Let me show you one more thing in terms of action code that I think will excite all of you. You can string action code together in both editing within an attribute directly or in the attribute inspection browser. I'm going to do it here because this is a nice place to quote. If you hit the option key, this is key, hit the option key and enter. That's how you get a new line in your document inspector. Now watch what I'm going to do. I'm going to say color equals poppy.
Nope.
Oh.
Maybe the other way. Yeah.
Nice typo.
Do we have that?
Yeah, poopy, right? So color equals poppy, right? So, and I'm going to hit enter. So, and you'll notice what happened up here. If I go back to the note, I was in the wrong folder. No, it's fine. So if you look up here in the note, you'll see that, and this is part of the challenge of working with that. If I hit up here and I hit Shift A, Command All, oh, I didn't hit enter. That's why. Hit enter and it'll go there. Did I do that right, Mark, or no? Why is that not working for me? Let me go back here. Maybe I just need to refresh. All right. I didn't hit enter. Let me do it again.
This is an OnAdd. You need to trigger the OnAdd.
Yeah, but I'm trying to edit it. I'll just do it up here.
So this is a lot of new information right at the end. Can we?
Yeah, but I just want to finish. It's the same concept. So I'm going to say color equals poppy. Okay. So I've just now basically strung together I've strung together my action code. So I'm basically triggering two actions: assign the prototype article and make its color the color of poppy. So now when I add an article, look, right? So someone asked earlier, how do I help prioritize my notes? Well, one way to help with prioritization is both the number priority, but also coloring. Right. So that is another way for you to help leverage and use action code and just demonstrate that you can string things together. Okay, now I'm done.
Last thing is a little bit of a plug for you. There have been questions and comments about your website, not website, but Patreon. Do you want to just say a little bit about what that is? Mark Bernstein posted the link for it.
Yeah. So Patreon is just a place. I mean, the software that's doing all this costs me money and time. And I buy a ton of like demo software and books to teach me how to do this stuff. So if you want to support my efforts, you can become a Patreon of mine and do that. Now, Patreon does take a lot of rev share, but it's an easy way for you to say, hey, I really like what you're doing. I want to support your work and I'm going to become a Patreon of yours. And, whatever it is, free, $5 a month, $10 a month to support my efforts and feed my software and book habits that keep teaching me how to do this.
I just want to endorse Michael's videos and channel. Like I thoroughly go through every video just to look for it for bugs, and they're all fantastic. And he spends hours. This is so much work to get done. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, just so you know, like guys, the linking video, for instance, took me about 15 hours just to produce that video, and it's maybe 20 minutes, maybe 30 minutes.
I would also like to add the plug that Mark Bernstein has a $50 promotion for those of us who have not bought the full version of Tinderbox, and that's available through today, and it ends, I believe, today.
That's correct.
And thank you, Mark, on behalf of the group.
Okay. So if you guys don't mind, I know we've gone about 5 minutes over, but I just kind of want to inspire you a little bit to give you a sense of what's possible once you go beyond this, right? So let me show you this, and this is really interesting. So we talked earlier about tags, and you're here, and I talked earlier about my use of prefixes. Okay, and again, I'm not going to show you the how. I'm just going to show you the what for 2 seconds. So let's say you're writing this new note, and remember, Peter today suggested that he likes to start his articles first with tagging those articles of what he wants it to be about. And again, this is a critical concept of the 4 C's of knowledge management, because the idea and the use of attributes, because what you can do is start separating these concepts and start creating value from the very beginning. So watch what's going to happen. Let's say, hey, Peter, give me some keywords that you used in your work.
Curriculum development.
Curriculum. Give me something I can spell.
Architecture.
Dog.
Dog. All right. So there's 3 tags that I want this article to be about. We're going to teach dogs how to build buildings. Okay. So we're going to teach dogs how to build a doghouse. And clearly your dog, whoever's dog is there, loves that topic.
That's my dog. I'm sorry.
Yeah. So he wants to learn how to build.
He
wants to learn how to build his own doghouse. All right. Now watch what this does. And this is all based on that action code that we've been doing and the asset development that Tinderbox allows you to do. Now watch what happens. I'm going to hit enter. Now look, nothing up my sleeves. Look over here in this list here. I'm going to go and hit enter and then click away. And what it's going to do is it's going to automatically create the tags architect, curriculum development, and dog.
Oh,
and then
wow.
and then I can go here. The dog is my best friend. Right? And I can go ahead here and put some text in architect, and I can put some text here. So what's important with this idea is not only do I have this term architect, curriculum development, and dog, but I now can start defining them for myself to remember what they are. Now, more importantly, too, you'll see that it automatically linked to those articles. So if I look at dog, hang on, let me go back here. Did I actually say it? No, here. Dog is my best friend, right? So if I go back to the article here and I look at dog, it's actually going to let me see the definition of that term when I'm doing my writing. And then let's say, well, it's not, it's really not about architecture. It's just about curriculum development and dog. Now watch what happens. I change the tags in this note, click away, dog gets unlinked, and I'm now got my focus here, but yet I retain all of those tags. What the beautiful thing about this, and this will be what we'll talk about in the 4th stage of our article development, I've now created an asset where I essentially now have a book of every single one of my terms and their definitions. That's what you're going to be able to do with Tinderbox. And it does take a bunch of code, and not to overwhelm you guys on that, but you'll learn how to.
So Michael, I'm gonna interject.
Yeah, you're gonna stop me here.
On me.
Yeah,
that was just simple and crystal clear. I know that everyone.
You're gonna stop me there. Yeah, you're gonna stop me there. But that's all stuff you guys will be able to learn how to do. So thank you very much, everyone. I hope you enjoyed it.
Oh, Michael, one last point. I was wondering, how do you handle multi-part articles?
Peter, I'm going to personally come over.
No, I already answered it right here. Introduction, body, conclusion.
No, I mean an article where you posted over more than one blog posting. This is part 1 of how to set up.
Yeah, that's advanced stuff for number 4. That's class 4 week.
So
that's class.
My dog has said it all.
Yeah.
He knows the meeting has to end. Yes, Cody, we got it. We understand.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, Peter, that's 4 weeks.
Would you end the meeting, please?
Yeah, so we're done. Hey, Mark, if you can send us the chat and I can help answer some of those questions on the chat. Everyone, reach out to me via LinkedIn, reach out to me via the forum, and let's do it again next week.
Great. And we'll see you next week and in the forum. Thanks so much.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks all.
Bye.
Good job, everybody. Thank you.
Bye. Bye-bye.
Hi there. I hope you enjoyed the meetup that we had today on September 18th on the first lesson of blogging with Tinderbox. As always, if you can, please do like this video and subscribe to the channel. Thanks again. Bye.